And good evening, screeners. Thank you for tuning into the screening room on the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication and on WRHU Radio Hofstra University 88.7 FM. Today, I'm joined by co-hosts Justin Murray and Julia Wachtel, as well as correspondents Kevin Antonita, Danny Ruiz, and Marianne Perino. We're going to discuss all of our top picks on the most binge-worthy films. Coming up later in the show, we'll have Marianne Perino give us a special box office update, and we will discuss our favorite television shows to rewatch. If you want more film news, reviews, and updates, please go check out the Screening Room's website, screeningroomwrhu.wordpress.com. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Screening Room, and let's get into it. So guys, how are we today? We haven't seen each other in a couple of weeks due to quarantine. So how's everyone doing? I'm so excited to be able to see all your wonderful faces again.
I can't tell you how happy I am to be back. Unfortunately, Danny Ruiz's Wi-Fi is not working with us, but we must persist. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to talk about our film and TV takes, and I'm doing pretty great in this quarantine. Justin, give me an update.
Yeah, no, so quarantine's been rough, but I'm really excited today to hear all your picks. I'm personally looking for things to binge watch myself, so I want you guys to sell it to me. Let's figure it out.
Marianne, how are you doing during quarantine?
I am good. I was so excited to put makeup on today for a reason. So, yes, we are here. We are talking about movies. I am very excited.
And Kevin, what about you?
Well, this is always it's always a pleasure to be doing this with you guys. We always have something fun to say, and even though it seems like we always talk about the same thing, we don't. And that's what's so fun about it, that we get to just talk about things we feel about movies and TV, and just like news in the media. That's stuff that I didn't even know about until coming on the show. So
yeah, absolutely. And just for everyone who's watching, make sure that when you see something that you like, leave a comment, and your comment could be featured on our show. I'm really excited to get into it. So should we just begin?
Let's go for it. So my first pick is Mamma Mia. We absolutely, so many of us on the screen room absolutely love Mamma Mia, me and Julia, but I just love the storyline so much. It's so crazy, but of course, with the Broadway fanatic that I am, this musical is just so much fun. I love the music of ABBA in general. You have such greats like Meryl Streep, Amanda Seyfried, Pierce Brosnan, Christine Baranski. The list just goes on, and it's just such a fun film to watch. It may not be the most Oscar-worthy film, but whenever you need just a good girls' night, a good night with friends, and you just want to watch something fun, Mamma Mia is definitely it. What do you guys think?
You know, I don't think that it's just a girls' movie. Everyone can appreciate the songs of ABBA, don't you think?
I agree. They have great songs.
They do. That's the one thing we hear about Mamma Mia. It's like the soundtrack is like what draws a lot of people in.
Totally.
Definitely. And
great.
And I think that's why it did so well on Broadway in the first place. It ran for over 12, I think like 15-ish years it ran on Broadway, and it's all because of ABBA. It's just wonderful music.
It has a good story too. It has a good family story. You could learn a lot from it.
It's a very interesting story. It's very unique.
The Broadway show is better. That is, simply put, it's better. But the movie is still enjoyable, although Meryl Streep can't sing.
Did you like the remake?
I've heard way worse singers than Meryl Streep, Julia.
Yeah.
All right. Agree to disagree.
Okay. So, Julia, what do you think? What are some of your favorite films to watch during quarantine?
Well, I would like to give mine first, but I actually have a problem because I've never seen this film that Justin's about to talk about, Whiplash.
My bad.
Oh, man. I can't believe you still haven't seen Whiplash. Whiplash is my #1 movie of all time. I think it's just a masterclass in storytelling. It has Miles Teller breakout performance. If you don't know what it's about a jazz drummer in college, and basically it's a film about how passion can lead to heartbreak when you get obsessed with things. I definitely think everyone needs to go and watch Whiplash. So what do you guys think about it?
You know, usually we do not agree on our film topics at all, as what's been later in the show, but this actually looks pretty good. I feel like I might actually agree with you on this one.
Okay. Anybody else?
I love Miles Teller, so that sounds good to me, and I know it won a lot of awards, so I will probably check that out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same. I haven't seen it either, but it looks really, really good. And I actually, like Julia said, I don't really agree with you on a lot of things, but this one actually, I might take your word for it.
Justin,
Yeah.
can you tell me
I'm
why?
surprised it's not Joker. I'm just saying.
Oh, ridiculous. My thing about the movie Whiplash is that it was such a small movie and it just blew up, and people are still talking about it 6 years later. So that alone, I think you should give it a watch.
Okay.
But I'm actually one movie that I haven't seen that I think is a Hollywood classic is the film Julia is going to talk about now. So take it away, Julia.
Okay. So my first pick, which is something that I knew was going to have to be on this list, was The Graduate. So I just took a film history class last year. Not that this was the first time that I had watched this film, but I went into this whole analysis and like really rewatched and focused on the music and the beautiful cinematography of this film. It's absolutely wonderful. It features the music of Simon and Garfunkel. And it's really one of the first films that focused on a type of, focused on a music score in this way. So I think it's really interesting that it has lasted the test of time, and the acting is just wonderful. I love the plot, about a kid who doesn't really know what to do with himself post-college. I think we're all going to be feeling that way in a little while, some of us closer than others. But yeah, this is a timeless film. I really love it. I think that everyone should go and watch it if they haven't. But most importantly, I think that the music really carries it through, which is going to be a theme for me, I'm sure for Katarina and some other people. I think the music makes these films binge-watchy. So has anyone else seen this film? I'm really excited to see it for my reaction. Let's hear it.
So The Graduate, I just like you, well, unlike you, I watched it for the first time in a film history class, and it blew my mind. I didn't know that The Sounds of Silence, the meme everyone was talking about for years, was from that movie. So blew my mind, and I think it's one of the best films ever made. I agree with you.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have actually. Go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
All right. So just like, yeah, also I'd seen it in film history class too. So they just showed me so much about this movie that I wouldn't have picked up by myself. Like just like the mise en scène and just like the lighting and even the sound bridges. As that one scene, it's not really a spoiler, where he's laying on the bed, and it's my favorite scene in the whole movie, where the dad's saying, "What are you doing?" But it's sort of like a voiceover, but it's sort of just sound bridges into the next scene, and it's about a graduate. And like, I know it sounds like a simple concept, but it's about him moving on with his life. And towards the end, it's sort of like a satisfying yet dissatisfying ending, and it's just great. It's one of the best endings that I've seen.
Julia, I know that you're not going to be happy with me when I say this, but I have not seen the film. But I do love myself a good coming of age story. I do love movies that do have great scores and great soundtracks. So I'm definitely very interested to be able to check this one out for sure.
What's interesting about this film is it doesn't really end on a happy ending. It kind of ends on an ending that you're almost a little unsatisfied. But I think that's kind of some of the beauty of it. And I think that it's a perfect one to rewatch or watch for the first time, Katarina. However, moving on, I would love to hear, Kevin, why Departed is on your top.
Oh, The Departed. It's been my favorite movie ever since I decided to basically just go into film. And shout out to my birthday twin, Martin Scorsese. He made this fantastic film about. It's a crime drama, but there's one thing I love about movies, that when there's duality aspect to it, you have Leonardo DiCaprio, who's basically infiltrating the Boston Irish Mafia, and then you have Matt Damon, who's infiltrating the police, the precinct. And this from the start. And the best part is just to see how their lives are so similar yet so different. And just like The Departed, it's just so I don't know, it's just so interesting to see how it just plays out. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily just like a happy ending, but it's just great. It's something you should watch. There's so many little pieces and trinkets into the film that sort of just bring it all together, and it's something you have to watch more than once, not just to get it, but just to see how you should have like seen it coming from the start, even though it's so complex, just like a world building kind of experience. Has anyone seen it? Or
Has anyone seen it?
I have not. I have not seen this one, actually. That sounds really interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely should watch it. It's on Amazon. Sorry?
Some Matt Damon, some Leonardo DiCaprio. It looks good.
Oh, yeah.
Very true.
Can I just say, Kevin likes Leonardo DiCaprio for sure, because
he's my favorite actor. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, you know what? Me too. Great. I'm gonna add that to my list. That is now on my list. Departed. We'll see.
You know who else has a great movie that we haven't even talked about yet? Marianne. I know she has like just an incredible list of movies, and I would like to hear the first one on the list.
Yes, the first one on my list is Crazy Stupid Love. Oh my God, no, 10 Things I Hate About You. Amazing movie. Heath Ledger is at his prime. It's a rom-com about high school kids. You know, it's a typical high school relationship, but it's not very typical because of Heath Ledger's character, and that's why I love it so much. He's a bad boy. He's everything you want, but he also makes you laugh. So yeah, I would love to see what everybody thinks about 10 Things I Hate About You.
Love this film. Specifically, the best scene, that big marching band scene. Oh my gosh. He's just that is a wonderful scene. I think it's such a fun film, you know. That's what I like about binge watching shows, is that a lot of them are really rewatchable because they're fun. And that film is like a fun one.
Yeah, totally. That's like my favorite scene.
I've actually never heard of this film before, but it's interesting that you said Heath Ledger's in his prime here, because a lot of people would put that towards another film that we're probably going to talk about later on. So this is really interesting that you say this, because now I don't know, and I'm like, I want to see a different side of him. So I'm definitely going to check it out.
It is a different side of Heath Ledger that I adore. It's great.
I also love you that Brokeback Mountain is the best of Heath Ledger.
Interesting.
But I also do love this
scene. What can I say?
I also do love the scene towards the end when she gets up in front of the entire class and reads like the letter to him. Like that, it was just like so heart-wrenching, but yet so beautiful, because that's when he realizes like they're in love, and it's such a good movie. Just a classic rom-com.
Yeah. You know, not to say on Heath Ledger, even though love him, he's great, but actually one of the reasons why everybody was skeptical about him being the Joker was because he was in he was in 10 Things I Hate About You, and just to see like the range in an actor like that is amazing. And it's a movie everybody should watch today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and on to our next movie, one of my favorites in Disney. Katerina is going to talk about Frozen.
Yes, so of course, I know so many people are kind of hating on Frozen because of how popular Let It Go was and how overplayed it was, but I can't help it. I love the score and the soundtrack from Frozen in general. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of music that I've heard in my entire life. The storyline is beautiful, especially because I have a younger sister, so I can connect to the sisterly bond that Elsa and Anna share throughout the entire film, and especially with Frozen 2 as well, where they kind of build on that as well. So I would say like Frozen and Frozen 2 together. But it's just, and the animation is so gorgeous, and I do really think that it's one of Disney's best animated films of all time, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I mean, you know what it is? Like, I do love Frozen. Not my favorite.
My
favorite either, but I do love it.
Do you think that Elsa's the best Disney princess?
No.
No.
Actually, get into that a little bit later. But I do not think she's not a princess though either. She's a queen. But
yes. Sorry.
Did you like Frozen 2?
Huh?
Did you think Frozen 2 was like just as good or worse, or?
I think Frozen 2 had a better storyline and a better book, better animation. But I do think that the music was better in the first Frozen.
I actually like the music from Frozen 2, but I see what you're saying.
I do like the music in Frozen 2, but not as much as the first one. The first one had more memorable music, in my opinion.
The first movie was better, just in general, honestly.
When we're getting into these, like, I don't know, the CGI princess films of Disney, I think that there is better. We'll be talking about one of them coming up. But, yeah, this is a good film. This is a good film, but the plot's a little cliched. I'm not surprised by it. So that's why I'm like, it's not my favorite, but it is enjoyable.
Well, Justin, so moving over to a completely different kind of, why do you think Birdman is so great? What do you like about it?
So Birdman, it was definitely in my top 5. This was a hard list to make, but one thing Julia just said was that maybe some other films are a little cliche in their plot. I think Birdman is one of the most original things I've ever seen in my life. I think that, all the hype came out last year about 1917 with the use of a one take to kind of make your film that way. I think Birdman did it better, and it did it before that. I think Michael Keaton has one of his best performances ever. The cast is great, and it's amazing. If you've ever like watched a play, it's also, you can see how a play is made and produced, but also you see this masterclass of acting and filmmaking in one. If you guys haven't watched it, definitely do that. So what do you think?
I tried watching this film.
Tried.
I couldn't get through it, if I'm going to be honest. I tried once. I tried one time, and I didn't go past the first 20 minutes. If I do see, like, I've seen films showing me the cinematography and why it's such a great film. I've had film professors telling me why it's great. But I'm not seeing it. Honestly, I think the plot is kind of lackluster, and it's a little eccentric.
A little eccentric. Okay, that's fair. I mean, it's not for everyone. It's definitely a weird story, I think.
Yeah.
Did this film win the Oscar the year it was nominated? I can't remember.
I couldn't tell you.
I believe it did. I believe it did.
Because I remember hearing a lot of hype about it, but I have not seen it, so I can't really judge it too much. But it did seem very interesting. I remember when I was watching the Oscars and just that entire awards season.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like, if you haven't watched it, definitely give it a watch. Try to stick through it, even though it's really weird. That reminds me of another film I think is really weird just from back in the day, which is Julia's next film, Grease. So go ahead and talk about that.
I mean, Grease is the word. Am I right? And you know what? I love Grease, even though some of the morals of this film may not stand up to the test of time. The music is incredible. The characters are fun. And to me, like the most fun thing about this musical is because of those character interactions and the amount of time that I've seen the musical done in like play formats and in community theaters. There's a lot of like camaraderie with this film. So even though there are some moral issues with it, especially the ending with Sandy changing herself and Danny changing herself, I still think that this is a worthy film to rewatch because you have to see these films in the time that they were made, even with the lens that we're seeing now at present day. So yeah, I love this film. I think it's so fun, and I've always wanted it to be like part of this fun high school experience is what I thought high school was going to be like because I'd seen this film so many times. So I'm wondering other people's thoughts if people loved it as much as I did.
Yeah, I also absolutely love Grease. Again, the musical theater buff that I am. Like when Julia, when you before how the Broadway version of Mamma Mia was better than the movie, I think it's the opposite for this. I think the movie did a better job for as a whole with the storyline and with the music than the Broadway version does. And I know that with future or like upcoming Broadway versions, they kind of tweaked it more to fit the storyline of the movie, which I think that was a better choice because the movie is such a classic, and when people are going to go see the musical, they're going to be disappointed with some of the, I guess, original writing of it. So I'm very happy that they kind of changed it that way. They added in "You're the One That I Want" because that was originally only for the movie. It's a better song overall than the original song that they had. So I love it, and I can never get enough of it.
Yeah, in the same way, I've had "You're the One That I Want" on my iPod since I was in the 5th grade. I think it's just one of those classics. I think Grease is an important movie. It's a generational movie. And I think, like you said, a lot of people criticize the plot for being outdated, but I think it's important to see where it came from and like in context. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting into more of a modern, I want to say dark film, and also in the sphere of like all of the I want to say like superhero popularity. I want to say that this film is kind of one of those ones that really started it. So can we talk about Dark Knight and why that is one of your choices, Kevin?
Oh, The Dark Knight is it's just it's I think it's one of the best comic book based movies of all time, and just like a lot of people have said, like even you can argue that the Dark Knight himself isn't really like the main character of this movie, and there's sort of like a duality with him and the Joker where they're sort of opposites but the same, and it's so much more complex than just any other comic book movie. And the matter of the fact is that just like the whole trilogy itself, it's great, but this movie alone, it just stands out in just how it presents itself as sort of just like a dark movie, and it's sort of, I would say, created sort of like this dark theme in superhero movies, and you don't see it quite often. I wouldn't necessarily say that this movie either which is sort of a theme in the movies that I picked. It doesn't have like a set happy ending, and there's something about it that you can find something a little theme in every single scene or every single plot point in this movie. So, I mean, does anybody agree with me or?
So
I
oh, go ahead.
I agree. I love Heath Ledger in this movie too. Like, you know, there's one side of Heath Ledger, my movie, and then there's this side of Heath Ledger, which is genius. And he makes you laugh, and then he's like horrified. It's great.
This was one of those movies that like everyone said was one of the best of all time. You know, if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? And I watched it for the first time, I think last year. It did blow my mind in how incredible Heath Ledger's performance was. But I think I don't understand a lot of what makes this movie great outside of him. That's the hard part for me. Maybe it's another watch for me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Rewatch it is.
Yeah, you definitely have to look at the theme and like what he means. Like, just look at the Joker as sort of like, I hate to say it because he's so amazing, but like as a chess piece in the story and how he basically affects everybody. How one he created, it's sort of a spoiler for those of you that haven't seen The Dark Knight. How he created a new villain basically out of like almost thin air, out of like Gotham's hero, and he made him dark. How he affects basically Batman's career. How he's basically the opposite and kind of the same. As you know, Batman himself, and just even like straying away from the Joker, just how everybody reacts to the world and everybody's, I guess, view on Gotham. It's sort of like in a way similar to Joker the movie from last year. There's sort of like a theme there of how Gotham is sort of like a plague city, which has been the theme throughout the trilogy, but this one sort of presents it, I think, the best, and I think it's worth the rewatch in my opinion. And there's something about Christopher Nolan that his movies are just. They're just amazing in each and every single way, and I think one of my favorite Christopher Nolan films, besides The Dark Knight and Memento, is Inception. And if I'm not mistaken, that's Marianne's one of Marianne's top picks. So if you could just explain that.
Yeah, Inception is incredible. I started watching it during this quarantine, and oh my gosh, my mind was blown. First of all, it has Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Leonardo DiCaprio in it, which is just an insane duo. But it just blows your mind. It makes you question reality. It makes you think. And you know, sometimes you have to have a good movie that makes you think, and I think that Inception really does it. So what does everyone else think?
To me, Inception was a little hard to follow, if I'm going to be honest. When I watched it the first time, I was confused a little bit about what was going on. But, you know, I think that's why it needs a rewatch, perhaps.
Yeah, I definitely agree with hard to follow. Like, me and my dad were watching it together, and we were like keeping tabs on each other. Like, did you understand that? Do you get this? But like, I kind of like that. Like, you have to think a little, like you have to keep up with it. It's definitely keeps your attention in that way. So I agree.
Yeah,
totally.
Definitely one of the most creative movies I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most creative movies I've ever seen, perhaps, is Katarina's next choice. If we could just get into it.
Yeah. So my next choice, for those of you that don't know me, I am Greek, and of course, one of my next favorite films is My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I can relate to it so much. My sister and I, my whole family, basically, I grew up watching it. We watch it all the time. It's so relatable, especially because I have a big family that I spend Easter and Christmas and all the holidays with all the time. So I can definitely relate to Nia Vardalos' character about that. And it's so good to be able to see like Greek families be represented in this movie, because I feel like Greek culture isn't really represented too much. I haven't seen it in too many films or TV shows. So having a movie dedicated to just being Greek and kind of being a woman that is being like not forced, but having parents always say, you need to marry Greek, and go have babies. Like, you hear that all the time. So it was just so funny to be able to watch. And as I grow older, I can just relate more and more to it every day. So yeah.
It's a great, so fun.
It is.
And it really did introduce me before having you as a friend. And I have another friend who's Greek. So maybe in real life I was having that interaction, but I was not seeing it, you're right, in like a pop culture sense, media sense. So I'm really excited that we were able to have this film and talk about it, because it's so fun and it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I also loved the movie because I'm Italian, and like you just notice, like, I think everybody can see their family in this family. But like Italians were so similar. It was so funny. I was laughing.
Oh yeah.
So are Jews.
Yeah, Italians, Greeks, and Jews are all just kind of like grouped into one. There were some things that about the that kind of get exaggerated. For example, we don't use fixing like injuries or anything like that. My house doesn't look like the Parthenon. People have actually asked me stuff like that before. That's not true. Over exaggerated just for comedic purposes in the film. But a lot of the other stuff, it's very true, and it strikes close to home.
So,
But
Is it worth the watch?
oh, it's definitely worth the watch, in my opinion. Even if you're not Greek, it's just so hilarious. And another film that's really about romance and love, but doesn't really have kind of the same ending as My Big Fat Greek Wedding, is Justin's film La La Land.
Oh man, so I've been really excited to talk about this. This is my musical for this list. It's, I think, one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. It's a beautiful, beautiful film, and that's one thing. Even if you don't love the movie, I don't think anyone can disagree with how beautiful the movie looks, just from a visual standpoint. But I don't know, something about the aspect of chasing your dreams and just falling in love while doing that. But also, if you haven't seen the film, maybe a little bit of a spoiler. Things might not always work out the way you want when you're kind of going for your dreams. Maybe you have to leave things behind. Maybe you don't. So I just think that this film, for all of the acting, the music, I just think that it pulled me in so much. A lot of people talk about City of Stars being their favorite song, but something like the opening track, one of the opening tracks, Someone in the Crowd, just kind of drew me in, and I've never looked back. I've watched this movie on repeat about like I watch it at least once every other like month. It's that good for me. So what do you guys think about this?
you know, I think it's interesting that this is one of your choices because I really didn't love this film when I saw it. Haven't rewatched it. I haven't wanted to. I think mostly because I didn't love the singing or dancing. I didn't think either of them were all that impressive, considering other musicals that I've seen have really, really incredible dance moves and things like that. I do agree the opening is probably the best part of the film, but like when you start so high and then it really like goes down in energy, and yeah, it just didn't do it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I can see you like you're just like in that when you watch so many musicals, like I'm sure you and both Katarina both do. But for me, someone who just came to this world and was like entranced by everything, it was really cool to see that. And yeah, I love Emma Stone in it. I think she kills it. So that's one small thing too.
I do love Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling together. It's an amazing combination.
I think it's a good film to introduce a lot of people to musicals, but I don't think it's a really great musical film overall. I agree with Julia. The singing's not that great, but the cinematography is beautiful. So that was a plus about it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, cinematography is done by Damien Chazelle, same one who made Whiplash. So I just think this guy, he knows what he's doing. Someone who also knows what they're doing is Julia, I think, with her next pick.
My pick, well, at this one, I was surprised that someone else hadn't picked this film, but of course, Wizard of Oz is on my list. What a fantastic film that has stood the test of time, truly. It's a children's classic, but adults love it. It's got a wonderful message, great songs. I really can't say enough about this film. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me in saying that it's one of the best.
No disagreements here.
It absolutely is one of the best. I mean, it's one of Judy Garland's most popular roles of all time. She's absolutely gorgeous. I know she had a terrible time filming this. We're not going to get into that, though. But regardless of that, her performance is absolutely stunning. And it's just such a beautiful film overall.
Absolutely. And perhaps less beautiful film is Kevin's pick, although I think that he might be Frozen. So let's move on back to his pick. And get into Marianne's next choice, which I think is a pretty fun film, if I do say so myself.
Yes, we were just talking about Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling together in La La Land, and oh my gosh, if you love them together, go see Crazy Stupid Love. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry. Steve Carell is in it, you know it's going to be good. I would say that maybe it is my favorite out of the choices that I've chosen here today. So yeah, the cast is jam-packed, and it is very accurate representation of love. So what do you guys think?
I think it definitely looks interesting as far as being like an ensemble cast. I've never seen it personally. That's one of the things that draws me in.
Totally. I think that there's been scenes that I've seen that are just like hysterical. It's fun. That's what it is. It's fun.
Exactly. Just another fun rom-com with a great ensemble cast that you can relate to many different storylines from it.
Not as fun, I want to say, as Katarina's last pick of our movie segment here.
Yes. So my last pick, Greatest Showman, Hugh Jackman. I think it's an absolute wonderful film all time. Jackman is just an unbelievable singer. Cinematography is gorgeous. The songs are gorgeous. And Paul did an amazing job. This Is Me, The Other Side. The whole entire soundtrack is amazing. Zac Efron, seeing him in a musical role, wonderful. So exciting to be able to see him again. Zendaya was great. Kayla Settle as Lady, she killed me. And it's such a fun, amazing film. And it's just so great. That's what I really say. Another musical film, little trend of mine.
Absolutely. This is so fun. And I love that it's a new film, because I wasn't sure that a lot of new films, I mean, La La Land, I guess, but I don't really agree that that's a great musical. Versus, I think British really does it with those fun dance moves, powerful songs. Yeah, it's like everything I'm looking for in a musical.
It's better than La La Land, in my opinion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I do agree with that. I feel like it didn't get the recognition, though, that it deserves. Like, the soundtrack is amazing, and I feel like in the box office it did not do well or what they were expecting.
But a film I think that surprised most, simply because it came out so early in the year and then still did so well in the Oscars, is Get Out, which is actually a film that I do agree with Justin is a great film to rewatch. So tell me a little about it.
Right, yeah. So Get Out, I think it shocked everyone. It was Jordan Peele's directorial debut, and it came out in 2017. It just kind of took the world by storm. I think it's culturally significant for everybody. It's just something that people can maybe not relate to, but they can see why this is so weird. And I think that, Julia agrees with me. One of the small films that she does agree with me on. And I just think that because of everything from the cultural significance to the horror aspect, it makes, even if I watch it again right now, I'll be creeped out, even knowing what happens in the next scene. So what do you guys think of Get Out?
Absolutely. It's so scary, but in a way that's psychological, which I think is the reason why I loved it so much. Great acting, great concept. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
it's a movie. It's a movie you need to watch. It's not like it's not a slasher film. It's not a paranormal film. It's psychological, but in a different way. There's it's sort of like a systematic, I guess, like villain instead of just like a single person. If that's not that's too much of a spoiler for anybody that hasn't seen it, but it's just a movie that it'll make some people uncomfortable, and I think that's the point. And I just love movies that do that on purpose because they want to prove a point to you.
Funny enough, I think my next film actually does make a lot of people uncomfortable. In a good way. In a good way. So my last pick is Shrek. I love this film, and I think it gets a bad rap for being crude. But in fact, I think it's a great film. It's the early animation of the early 2000s. They did a lot of work, and even though there's such growth in animation since the time that it came out to now, I still think that the animation is really great, and I think the story works well. I think the characters are funny, but I think that the humor is not just for children, and that's why I love it so much, because it's got appeal for adults and children, which I think is hard to do with a children's film.
I feel like the whole purpose of Shrek was to be a parody of a lot of the Disney films that were coming out. And I mean, even as a kid, I did get a lot of the jokes, of course, that were made for adults. But I did understand that it was a parody of Disney, and I loved this. It was so funny, and it's such a great film to this. I don't get why people are so uncomfortable with it half the time. I really don't.
It's amazing. Shrek's amazing. There's no question about it.
And
I think it definitely stands the test of time.
Musical.
I definitely think that memes and stuff have made Shrek a joke, but nah, Shrek is no joke. You watch Shrek and you're laughing. It's incredible.
Okay, let's get into Kevin's next choice, Shutter Island, which I really.
All right, so just a quick shout out because I didn't get to do it before. Shout out to The Shining, the best horror film of all time. I'll discuss it with any of you. I have so many arguments for that. But Shutter Island, this is a thriller movie by Martin Scorsese, the second Scorsese film in my pick. Also stars Leonardo DiCaprio. He's just amazing. It's a movie that you have to pay attention to stuff. It's a movie where you have to basically watch more than once so you can get it, and it's not one of the regular like Inception movies where there's just so much going on. It's like a simple, basically straight storyline, but there's so much that you miss watching it the first time, and it just gives me chills watching that last scene. Like, I think it's a watch for everybody. What do you guys think?
I am excited to see it after your analysis.
Yeah, this is
Yes,
definitely
I
one of
have
those films, just like Inception, that I hadn't seen, but I think it's one of Leonardo DiCaprio. I hear it's one of his best, so wanting to watch it now.
Oh yeah.
Let's have Marianne wrap this up because she's picked the film that I think deserves to be the best of Disney. Thoughts?
Yes, Tangled is incredible. The soundtrack, Zachary Levi and Mandy Moore together. If you couldn't tell, I love when there's chemistry between actors and you can see the chemistry even though they are animated. I love this movie. I will watch it anytime, anywhere. Makes you cry, makes you laugh. I also like that type of stuff too. So go watch Tangled. What do you guys think?
I disagree.
I
don't see that. I don't know.
Really? I
As
do-
one
I
of the
do love-
best.
I do love Tangled. I think the animation is gorgeous. Of course, the storyline is beautiful. It's just not my favorite. I didn't really get into the book as much as I did with Frozen or other Disney films, but I still really do enjoy it.
Yeah, agreed with the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication at Hofstra University.
That's bold.
Is the best Disney princess.
No, I
Wow.
think Belle is the Disney
Blonde.
princess. We're not going to
Jasmine,
get to my last choice, but Belle was the best Disney princess in my opinion.
It's Mulan. I'm sorry.
She's great too.
Wow, that was
I think that
very.
wraps it up for our film segment, guys. What do you think? All great choices.
Absolutely.
Even
Totally.
Justin's.
I do want to do a quick shout out to our king and person who runs all of our social media, Michael Bailey. He's given us our list of his top 5 films. We also have La La Land there. Interesting choice.
Blue. Wow.
It's a good
Not-
choice right there.
Not my choice, but it is his choice. So thank you, Michael. Thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for sending us that special report. We're going to get into Marianne Perino's special box office update. So Marianne, want to give us the update?
Thanks, Julia. Normally, I would give the box office statistics, but as everyone can imagine, the pandemic has caused movie theaters and production companies to temporarily close. Because of all these changes, big box office hits that were scheduled to open this year are delaying their releases. Today, I thought it would be nice to talk about the movies pushed back and when you can expect them in theaters again. Obviously, you can imagine that any movie set to open this spring has had to be delayed, including Milan, No Time to Die, the anticipated new James Bond movie, and In the Heights, which was produced by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Some, like In the Heights, pushed their release back a whole year, while others, like Mulan, plan to come out in the summer. Marvel has had to change their dates of multiple movies planned to release this year and the next. Marvel has shifted back some pretty anticipated films, including Black Widow, the Doctor Strange sequel, Doctor Strange Into the Multi-Universe of Madness, and The Eternals, which started out a new chapter of Marvel. The earliest you will now see these movies is November 2020, which is now we see these release date for which is now the release date for Black Widow. Others, like the new Scooby-Doo movie, Scoob, that was supposed to be released on May 15th, do not even have a release date planned because of how uncertain events are around the US. Finally, movies that were currently in theaters while this pandemic started has been released on streaming services like the Disney animation Onward, which is now available on Disney+. Looking on the brighter side of things, at least we now can binge all of our favorite movies from the comfort of our own homes. This is Marianne Perino with your not-so-typical box office update. Now back to our hosts, Justin, Julia, and Kat on the Screening Room, WRHU Radio Hofstra University.
Welcome back, screeners. Thank you once again for tuning into the Screening Room live on WRHU Radio Hofstra University, 88.7 FM, and also on the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication live. Today we're joined by Katarina and Julia Wachtel, my co-host, and also our correspondents, Courtney Adama and Julia Farella. In the first half, we just talked about our favorite movies to binge watch during quarantine, but now something that I bet you're all excited for, our favorite TV shows that we're going to watch. So without further ado, go ahead and take it away, Katarina, for your first TV show.
All right, so one of my favorite TV shows of all time is, of course, The Office. It's just such an amazing mockumentary. I think that the comedy is so funny. You do have to have a certain kind of dry humor in order to be able to get it and understand it. The first season, I will say, wasn't too great, but once you get past the first season, seasons 2 through 7 are absolutely hilarious. And I think Steve Carell does an amazing job as Michael Scott, and the entire cast is just so hilarious. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I love
I completely agree.
it. Seen it over and over again.
I love The Office.
I really think The Office set up for shows like Parks and Rec and then like Community, all those other shows that are like so inspirational and like big moments in television. The Office really set them up for that.
They definitely did. It's one of those ones that people can watch over and over again easily because you could just jump in any episode.
It's just such an easy watch. It's something that you can really put on whatever mood you have, really whenever. And I think that's really what makes it so valuable in terms of binge watching.
And I think another easy watch TV show is Julia's pick, which is Gilmore Girls. So, Julia, why do you think Gilmore Girls is such a binge-worthy show?
I love Gilmore Girls for many reasons. I think mostly like the personal connection, the mother-daughter connection that comes with Gilmore Girls. It's also so funny. The jokes and the character development is great. I can't say enough great things about Gilmore Girls. I love the theme song. I love the characters. I love the setting. I just think that the humor is fast-paced. We're going to talk a little bit more about Maisel, but same creator for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel with Gilmore Girls, and it shows. The production value is there, and I think it's an outstanding show and a great show to rewatch. Anyone else thinking of rewatching this?
I've actually never seen Gilmore Girls, but I know Julia. I know you've known this, but you've always told me you have to watch it. It's just I don't know. I've never gotten to
No one's seen it. That's horrifying.
I don't know if it's my type of show. I think
It is everyone's type of show. Okay.
from what I've been told,
I feel
Rory
like
is very obnoxious.
You know what? The Year in the Life, which is the Gilmore Girls reboot, did make the characters a little more obnoxious than I think they were in the original series. Specifically, I think seasons 1 through 3 are its best. So if you are a little concerned about that, I will say the end, it does kind of jump the shark. But those first couple seasons are just incredible. And I really do think that it has appeal for everyone.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. Not sure.
How many seasons does it have, actually?
I believe it has 6 or
Okay. See, I gotta know because if you're gonna binge a show, it has to be stuff for you to get through. It has to be a while. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting comment because one of your choices has a lot of seasons. One of them so bad that they couldn't have made it. But anyways, hot take. Tell me why you picked How I Met Your Mother.
Right. So I don't know. That was a weird comment you made about this one of the seasons not being great because How I Met Your Mother has 9 beautiful, incredible seasons. Unlike a show like maybe the Parks and Rec or the That 70s Show or a lot of sitcoms, I think How I Met Your Mother is one of those shows that has a plot, has a point to it. The characters change and grow through the seasons. And while they may do that in other shows, here we're going towards a goal, how to meet the mother. What's the story really? I think it's a story that stands the test of time. And the ending's controversial for a lot of fans. But I think if you think about it, if you really think about it, it's really great. So what do you guys think?
The last season just ruined it.
How can you like
Just ruined it. Just
what sicko likes the ending of How I Met Your Mother?
I
Well,
love that ending.
the ending
Here's the
was
thing.
terrible.
I think that the last season was good. I think the last episode wasn't that good. But I don't a fan of the last episode, but I completely understand why the writers chose that end. You could as soon as you rewatch the show, you understand it completely.
100%. It's a great ending.
No, it's such a bad ending. You work all the way up to like having this relationship with the mother, and then it just turns around and Ted and Robin are a thing back again. I just thought Barney and Robin were just 2 great characters that fit together, and they balance each other out. And Ted, the entire time, he just wasn't a likable protagonist. Barney was way better.
The way they ended it was just, oh, well, they were married for certain number of years.
And she died.
Really
It was
quickly,
very unsatisfying. The ending, like everything else up until that point, because I will say this is the first sitcom I have ever watched all the way through. I am not really a fan of sitcoms, but I did thoroughly enjoy watching this TV show. but then you get through all of it and it's just so unsatisfying. It feels like it wiped away all of the hard work that you did putting into like watching the whole thing.
See, the reason I love the ending so much, if I can really quickly, is while it's really quickly and rushed and kind of turned around, like you guys mentioned, when he ends up with Robin, I think that it just shows that, you know, no matter if you get the perfect ending, there's a life after that, and then it moves on. I think that's a really cool fact that we don't get to see.
Why Robin? Their relationship has proved multiple times that they just don't work out together. They clash way too much.
We will fight about this forever. So we are going to move on and get to a great sitcom, another sitcom.
The best sitcom. We're all right. It's that 70s show. It's my favorite show that I've ever watched. 1998, you get the start of Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher, Wilmer Valderrama. It takes place in the 70s in lovely Wisconsin. You have such a great like outlook of all these group of friends together dealing with high school, college, and just things about growing up. And while it's set in the 70s, everything about it is just so relatable. Everyone has that group of friends that they grew up with. And I just think it's the humor just carries on until today. And it's one of the first like groups of friends sitcoms that really work out.
You know, this is another one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. I absolutely love it. I can go watch it for hours on end. But I will say this is another sitcom where the last season could completely ruin it. That last episode, I feel like.
Is it because of Topher Grace?
Yes, because when
Topher Grace left to do Spider-Man 3. So he left to go to do Spider-Man 3, and that was another movie that really helped kick off his career. So I can't really blame Topher Grace for leaving the show at that point. It was the best thing for him. But all the actors since then have gone on to do amazing things. Mila Kunis is a huge star. Ashton Kutcher is huge. All of these actors are basically really big in the community right now, and it's such a great show to watch. One of my favorites.
I still think the ending is kind of meh, but other than that, I feel like the show is just so fun. Otherwise, I really do enjoy it.
I try not to base shows off of the ending. I know we just bashed on How I Met Your Mother. I did enjoy How I Met Your Mother in general. I would say that is a show I enjoyed, and the same thing for that 70s show. I think they're both great and funny. Like, you know, sometimes it's really great funny. Like specifically, I think a lot of new CBS shows are having trouble getting that effect of like humor but not force. And I really think that 70s show does a great job at that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that like what sitcoms time and time again have proven is that it's really difficult to have a good ending, but that doesn't necessarily represent the show as a whole. And I would completely agree. It is just really easy humor. It's something that like everyone can really relate to, and like it's just a feel-good show.
Let's get into The Imposters, because that's something that I've never heard of, but seems to be on Courtney's list.
So I will say that this is one of the most underrated shows in my opinion. I think that this show was absolutely fantastic. It has 2 seasons currently. Unfortunately, that is all that will be made because it didn't get the recognition that it deserved. But it's about a con artist and the team that are trying to chase her who have been conned. And all of the characters are so intriguing. They all have such beautiful character arcs, and each of the storylines are so smart. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time watching it. I watched all 10 seasons of the first season right like in a week. Like I watched it right after another because I just wanted to know what was going to happen at the end. And I really just wish that more people were able to watch this because it is a drama. It's not something that's like necessarily an easy watch, but it's something that just keeps you enthralled the entire time. So is this something you guys would want to take a stab at?
Honestly, yes, because a lot of our opinions on television are very similar in the fact that like dramas, but like dramas that are intriguing. So yes, I would give that a watch.
See, now this show, is it like a tense kind of suspense show? Because that poster just said there's a victim. What's the deal with that?
Well, yeah, so there is definitely a lot of tense moments. It's not something that has necessarily a lot of action, which is something, in my opinion, that's a plus. I think that if there's too much action or too much physical depiction, that it really takes away from the story. But it's really mostly based on the psychological factors of someone who gets caught in a con artist system, and also the psychological aspects of the victims of those con artist schemes. So it really has a very interesting take on the whole situation.
I'm adding that to my list. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
That's very good.
All right, let's get into the next one. This is a show that I also have seen and I love, but Katarina's going to tell us about Jane the Virgin.
Yes, so Jane the Virgin is one of the most creative, interesting shows that are. Okay, here we are. It's one of the most creative shows that I've ever seen in my entire life. I think that the way that they made it into a telenovela for American audiences is just so unique and so different, something that you don't really see that often. The storyline of a virgin getting artificially inseminated and then having a child is something that you would never even think about at all. And it's just such, you get the perfect mix of comedy and drama and even some musical numbers, and it's just, the acting is so incredible. Gina Rodriguez is such a wonderful actress in the show, and just the entire cast is so amazing. Has anyone else? I know Courtney said she's seen it. Julia, we have talked about it. You've seen the show before. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
I haven't seen it, but I heard really good things about it.
I've seen the first 3 seasons, but it did not hold my attention to the entire thing. You know what it is? After the first 3 seasons, it gets crazier and crazier and crazier. So I really think the first 3 seasons are like believable, and that's what I loved about it. And then I kind of felt like things got crazy. It got into like a real telenovela, which like was unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of the point of it. They wanted to make it, and they kind of hint about it as the show goes on. Someone gets amnesia, and you, like, beforehand, you see them constantly watching telenovelas with amnesia in it. So they kind of hint at it as the show goes along, and that's kind of the point of it. And that's why I loved it so much, because it was so outrageous.
I can see that working. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But another comedy that is very, very popular is Seinfeld, which is one of Julia Waxhall's favorites. So Julia, why don't you take it away?
I'm glad that other people love Seinfeld too. It's not just me. Seinfeld is such a great show. What's great about it is the fact that it's really not based on any form of a story. Their whole tagline is it's a show based on nothing. And the characters are all equally unlikable, equally like not going to get into serious relationships based on their own personal problems. Yet it's funny because that is what brings them together. Certain episodes are just so humorous, and it's really started a vocabulary among just general population. That's how important and influential this show is. And the characters are just, again, what really make this show exciting, different. I think it's better than Friends if we're talking about shows that came out in the 90s. I think that it does a better job in portraying real people. So yeah, I would love to hear other people's opinions about one of my favorite sitcoms ever.
I think the writing is just brilliant. It's absolutely one of the best like friend group sitcom shows ever, because you believe that they're all friends because they're not perfect people. Each of them are flawed in their own special way, and that's what you love about them, because they're all so different. Also, George is the best character on the show, and that's just fact.
Absolutely Elaine, in my opinion. I think that she's great. Super funny. If you have not seen her dance, like, that is the best part, in my opinion, of the entire series. So yeah, I can't say enough about Seinfeld and why I think it's such an important and also just a great show to rewatch from again and again. I think something about these sitcoms is we didn't have a chance to sit down and watch them from beginning to end and see how the writers actually made the story progress. It's not like drama, you know, so you can kind of pop in and watch an episode and then pop out. But watching a show like this and binging it, different perspective entirely. Yeah. But I really want to hear about Game of Thrones. It's not really my favorite show, or television show, I should say, although it really does act like a film, if I'm going to be honest. So let's hear why that's one of Justin's picks.
Right. So Game of Thrones, really excited to talk about it. Everyone knows it. It was one of the biggest TV shows of all time. The last season or two kind of fell off in terms of writing, but, you know, really for those first 3 or 4 seasons, the writing was some of the best ever made. You know, we call it TV, but like it's really serialized film at this point. And I just think that it's one of those short things that we have nowadays that we can truly call an epic in storytelling, because it's such a drastic story and you have all these different elements that kind of just fit in such a perfect way. I think in terms of writing, those first 4 seasons are a masterclass. I don't think there's anything I've seen that kind of compares to like the storytelling in Game of Thrones. I know it's not a lot of you guys' favorites. What do you guys think about Game of Thrones?
I love Game of Thrones. I thought it was probably one of the most, obviously it deviated from the books, which is a lot of people's issues with it, because there's only so far that the author can keep up with a TV show, and he still hasn't finished the books. You know, he's taking his time, and I think that for a show that was based off of such a widely popular novel and continued to be so influential, I think it was just amazing writing. The characters are someone that you hate and you love them at the same time. I thought it was a great show.
I tried watching the first season, and it like held my attention, but it was very hard to follow. So that was my problem with it, honestly.
You have to be really invested.
So many characters coming in and like dragons, and it was like a lot for me.
There's a lot of characters.
A realist, like I like things that are based on real people and real things that are probable to happen. So I just feel like I wasn't the target audience, but I know so many people love it and agree with you. So I think that is a good pick. It's just not my pick.
I totally have to agree with Julia. I mean, it wasn't something that really ever attracted me in the first place, so I never really got into it. And I have to say, even though we have all this time with quarantine, I'm not sure it's something that I'm really going to turn my attention towards.
That's fair. Definitely if it's not your target audience. I 100% agree. But I think like one of the things that the true mark of a good show is that even if you've never watched that episode of it, I think everyone knows the name Jon Snow. I think it's just a name people know. But yeah, so basically that's why it's one of my favorite shows. But yeah, but I'm really excited, to talk about a show that I have no idea what it is, never heard of it, which is Narcos, which is Julia's next pick.
Narcos is one of my most favorite shows. So it chronicles the late 80s with the drug kingpins in Colombia. It follows Pablo Escobar, and if you don't know who he is, he was the head honcho of drug dealers within the 80s. He brought cocaine into the United States, and it follows the DEA agents that took him down and then what happens after him. And I know it's sort of a spoiler. Oh my gosh, Pablo Escobar dies. Obviously, he does. We all know this as a fact. This happened in the 80s. It was a huge deal. I remember when I was watching it, my dad remembers this happening within New York because that was one of the major cities that they targeted. Has drama, intrigue. It really takes you into how everything was forming back then with DEA agents because they weren't as well respected back then. They were seen as, a smaller agency, and this takes you through so much drama and intrigue because targeting Pablo Escobar was like a huge thing. They missed him multiple times, and it was a huge deal. It actually shows the true side of Pablo Escobar because a lot of times they kind of skew him.
Interesting. I'm going to have to write it down because I have not seen it, but I have heard really good things about it. So that is going to be added onto my list. However, I really want to get into Courtney's next pick because this is the show I am literally binging right now. I am actually what we were talking about. I'm like excited to hear your hot take.
Yeah, so basically, I watched this show a few years ago, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I just loved it so much because there's so much to it. It's a historical piece, so it takes place back in the 60s, and it's featuring a bunch of men within the advertising industry and how women sort of start to take their first steps into that industry as well. One of my favorite characters, Peggy, is one of the main women who is able to break through and really make a name for herself. But of course, there's so many other aspects. We take a look at some of their family aspects, other relationships, and it's really just so amazingly written, and it's so beautiful as well. All of the 60s clothing and sets are beautiful, so highly recommend binging this. There's plenty of seasons out there, all on Netflix, so I would take a look.
I can't tell you how great this show is. The cinematography, wonderful. The costumes, incredible. The story, the plot, it's so great. And what's great about it is that it goes from the beginning of the 60s to the very end of the 60s. So you really feel like you got the entire scope within this film, this like advertising thing. And Peggy's a queen and I want to be her. Yes. I'm on season 7. I'm like freaking out. I don't know what to do with my life.
How many seasons are there of this show?
So good. So good.
I believe that there 7 seasons, Julia?
7. I'm on 7 out of 7.
Make sure you are aware of when that last episode comes up because it doesn't really seem like the last episode. And I remember when the ending came on and the credits rolled and there wasn't a next episode to watch. I was so disappointed. So just make sure you're aware.
All right. We are going to have to continue this conversation at a later date because I do want to continue talking about our favorite TV shows, but we have actually run out of time. I know.
Unfortunately.
Very tragic. So I just want to give a big thank you to all who are tuning into the screening room on the Lawrence Herbert School of Communication and on 88.7 FM, WRHU Radio Hofstra University. To recap, we've been talking about our most binge-watched content to help you get through the quarantine. If you want to check out the Screening Room's website, it's screeningroom.wordpress.com. Thank you for tuning in once again. Thank you for keeping on screening. I can't wait to hear everyone's quarantine binge shows as we continue this conversation on a later date. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks,
Thanks for joining.
guys.